welcome to Tuesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where we can't guarantee Sudokus with inbuilt secrets like marriage proposals every day. See yesterday's video if you want to see one of those. But we can guarantee absolutely world-class Sudoku treats, such as the one on the screen from the totally normal cat, a creature so totally abnormal when it comes to its Sudoku magnificence that it literally, well, it almost literally defies belief. Now, today's puzzle has its genesis in these speed-setting Sudoku competitions that are happening relatively frequently over on the Discord server at the moment, and of course this puzzle won first place, so we know it's going to be absolute quality. And I think the way the speed setting competitions work is that basically you get an hour to create these puzzles. So Totally Normal Cat has created the puzzle we're going to try today in an hour. And I gather that once we've solved it, we will think that that is going to be extraordinary. Now, next up, I need to apologise, actually. I wanted to release Zeta Math's setting video a couple of days ago, but life has got in the way, and I'm now intending to release it tomorrow morning, UK time. So I'm very sorry if you've been anxiously awaiting that. It is worth anxiously awaiting because it's brilliant, but it should be there tomorrow morning. Now, I've also got some very, very exciting news if you are a patron of the channel, because July's monthly reward, which will be released obviously on the 1st of July, it's just an extraordinary Sudoku challenge which has been created by none other than Jovial. She has made no less than 20 Sudokus, and it's basically, the way it works is you have to solve one puzzle in order to access the next puzzle. And my goodness, these puzzles are beautiful. All of them are handcrafted, all of them designed to be elegant and introductions to many of the Sudoku variants that you'll see on the channel. So, you know, it starts off with a classic Sudoku, but then the next Sudoku is a non-consecutive Sudoku. And basically there's a type of Sudoku of every kind you can imagine. And it's, I mean, the quality of these puzzles, I mean, they have to be played to be appreciated. And you know, I'm very grateful for Jovial for creating these puzzles for us, and I am just already looking forward to the feedback. I know you're going to love them. So that's coming for patrons on the 1st of July. Look forward to it. Now let's get to this one. What are the rules, and what's it called? In fact, it's called Strands. Here are the rules. Totally Normal Sudoku will supply, will it being by Totally Normal Cat, that seems appropriate. In cages, digits must sum to the small clue in the top left corner of the cage. Digits must not repeat in a cage. There is exactly one cage in the grid where the cage is broken. Okay, i.e. either the sum is incorrect or the digits are repeated, or both. Good grief. Right, so in a normal killer cage, let's look at this one. These three squares would sum up to 20, and we couldn't repeat a digit. So what we couldn't do, for example, is go 8, 8, 6, because that would repeat the 8s. Although these 8s would obey normal Sudoku rules, they don't obey killer Sudoku rules. Now in this puzzle, one of these cages is basically a liar, and we'll have to work out which one and how it's lying, I suppose, because it could be lying in terms of its total, or the fact it has repeated digits, or both. Right, we'll worry about that in a minute. Now, the pink lines, to me they sometimes look purple, but I'm no doubt they're meant to be pink. The pink lines are incomplete arrows. The digit on one end of the line is the sum of the other digits on the same line. Wow, okay. So that means that, right, so basically we have to imagine one side of these lines is a circle. So in a normal arrow clue, let's imagine this square was a circle. In a normal arrow clue, these two squares would be we'd add these up and we would put that sum in the circle digit. Here, we don't know which side the circle is on. That is intriguing. But I guess what we know is for this arrow, for example, the circle isn't in the middle. It's got to be at one end or the other. Right, I've no idea what that means. Anyway, do have a go. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. Now, I can immediately see that there is a problem with the cages at the top of this grid, because there is no way that well, I was about to say that there's no way that both of these cages are correct, but actually that's wrong, or wroggen. It is possible they're both correct, but if they were both correct, this cage would be wrong. Right, so what we can say right at the start here is that one of these three cages is a liar. How do we know this? Well, it's because I know that a 24 cage, if it's correct, has an 8 and a 9 in it. I know a 23 cage, if it's correct, has an 8 or a 9 in it. Now, I know for sure that there is no way an 11 cage has an 8 and a 9 in it. So if you imagine, if we did have an 8 and a 9 here, and we do have an 8 or a 9 here, there would need by Sudoku to be an 8 and a 9 in that 11 cage, which breaks it. Unless, of course, the 11 cage is the liar. So let's imagine the 11 cage was a 20 cage. Then that would work. But clearly, yeah. So there are three possibilities. Either these two, or one of these two, is lying, which means the 11 cage could be correct. And if this is lying, obviously it doesn't have to have an 8 and a 9 in it. It could be anything. It could be a 6 cage, it could be a 1, 2 and a 3. But what we do know is that one of these cages is wrong. Now, what does that mean? So maybe that means the other cages are correct. Right, here we go. Right, I'm getting my head around this. So, we've proved one of these cages is wrong. Therefore, the other two cages in the grid are correct. And look, one of those is a 7 cage. So that 7 cage we know contains 1, 2 and 4. Now, does it mean anything for the 20 cage? I'm thinking about high digits. I don't know if that's the right thing to think about, because I know that one of the... Yeah, here we go. I've got it, I think. Right, I know that one of the 23 or the 24 cages is a true cage, because there's only one incorrect cage. It's possible they're both correct, but if they're both correct, the 11's wrong. But that's not relevant to what I'm thinking here. Whichever one of these is correct, it has an 8 or a 9 in it. Now, these two squares at the top of the 20 cage therefore cannot be an 8 or a 9, regardless of whether the 24 cage or the 23 cage is correct. And if these can't be 8 or 9, what goes in here? What digits do we know have to appear in a 20 cage? Well, there must be an 8 or a 9 or both. Because if there isn't, the biggest digits we could put in the 20 cage would be 7, 6 and 5, which only add to 18. So this square is an 8 or a 9. Now, I've not done anything yet with the pink lines. I'm just wondering now whether I can get a handle on this one. If the 23 cage is a true cage, this square has to be a very high digit. It's got to be 6, 8 or 9. And this square... Oh no, that's not going to be... I was just thinking I could say this square has to be at least 3. And therefore I was thinking this square would have to be at least 9. But I think the problem is you could reverse the order of the arrow. And this could be a high digit and this could be a low digit. So even if the 23 was correct, you can still make the arrow work. And the expression we look for at this point is bobbins. So maybe I can do more with the cages, can I? Or maybe actually look at box 5. I'm wondering about box 5 all of a sudden, because this little cage here is entirely in box 5, which means it's going to have a small digit on it somewhere, or at least one. So I'm just wondering if we can get a handle on the number of small digits in box 5. If that's a 4 and we get a 1, 2 pair, 3, 4, 7, 5. Oh no, because you can reverse the order of the cages, it's very possible for actually there to be 2 high digits, for example, on this arrow. This could even be crazily, it could be like 9 and 8. So although normally when my attention is drawn to arrows, I'm thinking I've got to put low digits on the arrows. Here, you don't get the same sort of constraints at all. Sorry, I'm not thinking about this clearly. So can we restrict those 2 squares then? If this is 9, these 2 have to be adding up to 11, and they're not 2, 9. Or yeah, okay, right. They can't be 3, 8 either, because I know there will be an 8 in one of those cages, and therefore that will remove an 8 from these 2 squares. So this is either, if this is 9, this is either 4, 7 or 5, 6. And if this is 8, these are adding up to 12, they're not 4, 8, and they can't be 3, 9, because there's a 9 in one of those, and therefore there have to be 5, 7. Oh, so I have already listed all of the possible digits into these squares. So if that was 6, 8, 9, there would have to be a 7 in here. If this was 6, 8, 9, there would have to be a 7 in here, and this would be the liar, because it couldn't be 7, 8, 9 then. If this was true, if this was 7, 8, 9, you'd have to, you then couldn't make this 5, 7 or 4, 7. This would have to be 5, 6. Right, that's broken it. Right, got it. This is a liar. Why is this cage a liar? Naughty cage, because if this is 7, 8, 9, these have to be 5, 6. It's forced because we need to make this 20 cage work somehow, and the only way of doing that is going 6, 5 in here and 9 in here. But what are these 3 digits there, therefore? These 3 digits have to be selected from 1, 2, 3 and 4 because 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 have been used up. Now, this row has a big problem now because those 6 cells have to add up to at least 21 because let's think about why. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, which is the absolute minimum I could put into those 6 cells, is 21. How can I make these add up to 21 if these 3 can only be selected from 1, 2, 3 and 4? It's impossible because the maximum I could make those squares add up to is 9 if I pick 4, 3 and 2. And 9 plus 11 is only 20. So this is broken, and this is therefore not correct. And that is exactly what we're looking for, because now, once we've worked out the 24 cage is a liar, we know that the 11 and the 23 cage have been well behaved and they are telling the truth, which means this cage is a 6, 8, 9. Oh, and that's... Right, there's several things occurring to me here. The first is I want to look at this digit, because that can't be 9 anymore, because if you put 9 in the middle, whatever you add to it will create a double-digit number at one end of the arrow. But also now I can't use 6 in here, so I must use 7. But it could still be 4, 7 or 5, 7, so I haven't actually resolved this cage. Sorry, I thought I would have done. I keep looking at this. It's very strange. I know now that this is a lying cage and I should just ignore it, but it keeps attracting my attention. Right. Now, what can we say about this? I think I've still got a problem with the 11 cage, haven't I? 3, 4, 5. Yes, I see. Yeah, I've got it. I've got it again. Look, these 5 squares contain the 4 digits 6, 7, 8 and 9. That means these 4 squares have got to be selected from 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And we've just thought about this. What would happen if there was no 5 in these 3 squares? Then the maximum I could make them add up to would be 9. And the same problem which was arising in row 2 would arise in box 2. I couldn't make those 6 squares add up to 21, which they must add up to at least 21. So there is a 5 in there. And if there's a 5 in there, there is not a 5 in there, and that means this is a 4-7 pair, and we get our first digit placed. That's a 9. Let's get rid of the 7s there. There's no 4 in here anymore, which means this square's a 1, because now I'm still faced with the challenge of making these 3 squares large enough that these 6 squares add up to 21. Well, that means these 3 squares have to add up to at least 10, and there is now only one way they can do that, and that's to miss the 1 out. So that's a 1. Let's miss the 5 out of the corners here. These squares have got to now be 1, 4 and 6, because they've got to be the missing digits in the sort of makeup of the triangular number. Those squares have become 7, 8 and 9. So the real 24 cage was never here. It was sort of transported TARDIS-like into these squares. Okay, so there's an 8 and a 9 in those squares. Let's put that in. And can we get any more easy wins here? Let me just think about this. I want to look at this square next, but I suspect I'm missing easy victories, so let's try and find those. 6 has to go in here, and I was thinking that meant something, but it means nothing. I've got to just ignore this cage. Right, not seeing anything. Let's look at this square. So this is a 6 or an 8. Ah, okay, but this cannot be a 1. So I was wondering whether this could be a 7, and this could be a sort of a 7, 6, 1 arrow, but that doesn't work. Yeah, I see. The critical point now is that this square has a minimum value of 3. Now let's try and make this 3 and make this the circle of the arrow. That would have to be 3 plus 6 equals 9, which is impossible because we know the 9 in box 3 is in these 3 squares, not here. So that means this is not a low digit on this arrow. This is the circle of the arrow. This is the high digit. And if it's the high digit, it's got to be higher than 6 or 8. So it's got to be higher than 6. So it's 7, 8 or 9. And it's not 9 because there's a 9 here. So it's now 7 or 8, which means this is no longer 8 because this can't be 9. So this is 6. And this is a 1 or... Oh, and this is a 1 or a 2, and it's not a 1. So that's a 2. That's an 8. Ah, and then we need an 8 in that 23 cage. So all of those go into the grid all of a sudden. And suddenly we're almost cooking with gas, which is unusual on a TNC puzzle because they have been known to take me rather a long time. That square is not a 9. 8 must be in one of these squares by Sudoku. 2 is moved up to live in the fictitious 24 cage. Okay, what do we do now? Can we do this arrow? I suspect not. Well, let's have a look at row 4. We need 3, 5, 6 and 7. One thing that's quite interesting about this puzzle is that I've not even looked at the bottom 5 rows of the grid yet. It's like 2 different puzzles. We've just looked at the top 4 rows. So I'm wondering if we're going to do the top 4 rows and then sort of work on a new puzzle at the bottom, which is quite weird. Now, this square can't be a 3. Yes, it can't be a 3 because how would we make this pink arrow work if this is a 3? We can't do 3 add 7 because this will be 10. So we would have to go 3 add 4 equals 7, or, well, that's in fact all you could do. That would be the only way that could work. And you can't repeat the 7 in box 1, so that just can't be a 3. If this is this 5 doesn't work either. If this is 5, let's look at this. If this is 5, we can't put 7 here for obvious reasons. 5 and 7 is 12, so we have to put 4 in. And now we've got a choice for this square. It's either 5 plus 4 equals 9, which breaks, or it's 1 plus 4 equals 5, which breaks, because we can't put 1 or 9 in this square. So this is all broken, if that's a 5. So this is now 6 or 7, which means it is the sum, doesn't it? Yeah, we can't make this 7 anymore. It's absolutely impossible, because we'd have to go 7 plus 0 equals 7, or something like that. So this is 4, that's 7, and this needs to be a low digit, which allows this to add up to the right number. So this is 2 or 3, and it's not 2, it's therefore 3, and that's 7. Good grief. That's not 6, look, because of the 6 up here. Let's check Sudoku. Have we got any more? No. This is now an 8-9 pair, which means these squares here are 2, 5, 6 triple. 2, 5, 6 add up to 11. So the 24 cage was actually an 11 cage in disguise. And those squares are 1, 3 and 4. These squares are 5 and 7 by Sudoku. So we've got lots and lots of pairs and triples in the top 4 rows. And we've got one more. Oh, I see. Yeah, look, we've got one more arrow here. Now, what we cannot do is separate these digits by 1, because then this square would have to be a 1, which it can't be. So there must be a 3. Oh. So this is a 3, 6 arrow, because once you know there's a 3 on this arrow pair, whoopsie, hang on, my pencil marking's gone awry. Once we know there's a 3 on this arrow pair, and we do, this square becomes a 5, which means these squares become a 3, 6 pair, which means they're separated by 3. You put 3 in the middle, therefore, and that fixes the order. Good grief, that's so strange. I almost thought I'd made a mistake there when this was 3, 6, but I don't. I think it's okay, isn't it? Because you can then just put the 3 in the middle. A double 3 on the arrow is fine. Wow, okay, this 5 is giving me 5s and 7s. This 6 is removing a 6 from that square. 3's got to live in one of those 3 squares at the bottom of the grid. 7 is in those same 3 squares by Sudoku. We've now managed to poke out into row 5 of the grid for the first time. Any more 5? There's a 5 on this arrow. No 2 on this arrow. In this cell. We've now got another low digit into box 5 as well. So now we know there's definitely a 2 in there. What does that mean? I'm sure it means something for this arrow. I'm just trying to get my head around what it is. I mean, if this was a 1-2 pair, these squares would be a 1-2-3 triple, and this arrow would have to be 4, 5 and 9. If this is a 2-4 pair, okay, if this is a 2-4 pair, you'd have 3 2-4 in these squares. You'd then have to put 1 on the arrow, because if you didn't, you'd be adding 5 and 6 to make 11 at least. So what we can say is that whichever digit of 1 and 4 is not in this domino, it is used on this arrow. Now that's suddenly got me wondering, this isn't going to turn into a colouring puzzle, is it? Because I can now see that I can I know these squares here have got to be selected from 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, because I know that there's a virtual 1, 2, 3, 4, or I suppose it's easier to see it as a 1, 2, 4 triple within these 5 cells. So this arrow suddenly become, well, it's suddenly become clear that this square has to be a low digit, doesn't it? Because if this is the circle, we're adding at least 5 and 6 together, which is nonsense. So that's not 9. This is not 5, and this square is a 1, 2, 3 or 4. Yeah, okay. 3, look, has to be down there. And we've got 5 on this arrow. Right. 5 on this arrow is interesting because this 5 cannot be in the circle of this arrow. Because if 5's in the circle, we're adding up to 5. 1, 4 would not be available. If we put a 1 and a 4 on this virtual arrow, that square's got no fill. And we can't use 2, 3 because 2's already in the column. So 5 is part of the sum on this arrow, which means we're heading for a big digit, and we're not allowed to add up to 8 because 8's in the column. And we're not allowed to add up to 7 because 2's in the column. We can't add, so it can't be 5 plus 2 equals 7, and it can't be 5 plus 3 equals 8. So this arrow is 5 plus 1 equals 6, or 5 plus 4 equals 9. And that means that there is a virtual 1, 4 pair in column 7, because whichever version of summing we do in these 3 squares, we're either using a 1 or a 4, and that will combine with this square to rule out, so this square's a 3. That is a bizarre deduction. That's not a 3 anymore. And now this little arrow has a 7 on it by the power of elimination. There's no 7 in those squares we've pencil marked in column 7. So the 7 is on the arrow, along with whatever we don't use here. So we've either got 1, 5, 6 or 4. Oh, I see. So it's the high digit that moves. Right, this is interesting. So these squares here, this has definitely got a 7 on it. And then it's got either the 6 or the 9, depending on what we don't put on this arrow. And that's going to limit this square. Because obviously in fact, obviously this square is now the circle of this arrow. Because there's no way that can be the circle, because we'd be adding up to at least 13. So this is not a 9, and this is not a 6. And this square is either, and we know there's 7 on the arrow, sorry, I'm getting there slowly. So it's either 7 equals 6 plus 1, or it's 9. It's not 9, 6, it's always got a 7 on it, so it's 9, 7, it's a 2. This square is a 1 or a 2, which means it's never 3, which means the 3 goes here, which means there's a 3 down there. That is weird. Right, let me just think about this again. So this is either 7, 6, 1. Which makes that 4. Oh, that doesn't work. Sorry. This square cannot be a 7, I don't think. Because if it goes 7, 6, 1, this square has to be a 4 now, and that means that we need to put 6 in here, because this has to be 1, 5, 6, and we'd repeat the 6 in the column. So this square must be a 2, which means that must be a 9, and this must be a 7, because we need to keep them 2 apart, and we know we're using 7 in this domino. So now, this has not got a 4 on it. So this is 1, 5, 6 all of a sudden, This square's become 4. Oh, this is huge. This is huge, because now look what we've done. Now we have got 3, 1, 2 in box 5, which means this arrow is a 4, 5, 9. It's a 4, 5, 9 arrow. And where does the 9 go on it? It's got to go there. So this is a 4, 5 pair. How do you make a puzzle like this in an hour? It is just ridiculous. It honestly is. Oh, I shouldn't have deleted all that because I'm forgetting that this arrow is constrained. That can't be 8 now, and that can't be 6. So this square is reduced to being 1 or 2. 6 plus 2 equals 8 is still possible. Oh, sorry, but we've got a 7 here. Do Sudoku, Simon. That's a 6. This is a 7. So this is a 1, which means this is a 1 and this is a 2, and this is an 8. And that's a 9. And suddenly it's going better. Oh, 1, 6, that's a 4 by elimination. That's a 1, that's a 6. So it's now going strangely well. Okay, now those squares are they're a 1, 6 pair. I can do that. That's a 6 and that's a 1. These squares are a 2, 8 pair. One of them is on this arrow. We'll look at that in a moment. We've got 1, 4, 5 to put into row 6, and that's a 1, and that's C's 4. Okay. Can we keep this going? So we're making our way down the grid. Oh no, it's not fair to say we haven't done any logic in the bottom of the grid actually, because I did do logic with these 3 squares. So I'd be maligning this arrow unfairly, which I shouldn't do. Ah, I've got a 1 here. That's a 1, 4 pair. So now I know what those 3 squares are in theory. Those squares are 3, 8, 9. And these squares are 4 and 7. I can see that. Why can't I see the other digit? 2. 2, 4 and 7. That's not a 1. Oh. Well, that means we know what this arrow... Well, we don't quite know this arrow. We know that that's the 6, because we know one side of it has to be a 6, because it's adding up to 6 on the arrow. Oh, no, I'm wrong, aren't I? That could be 5, 1, 6. Why can't I see that? Why is that not natural? I do not know, but that's incredibly bad of my brain. Okay. I can hear them. I don't know if you can hear it. The mocking duck is whack, whack, whacking out there. Probably as a response to my bad logic there. Now... what shall we do next? Which arrow is the weak arrow, if any? Is it Henry, the mild-mannered janitor? I don't know. Hang on. What? Yeah. Ah, there's a 4 here. We can do more Sudoku. 4, 5, 3. So maybe this column? I've got a lot, actually, yeah, I've got a lot of low digits in this column. This is better. 7, 8, 9 is going on this arrow. So now, this can't be an 8. Beautiful. Because if this was an 8, that would be implying it was going to be the sum of those 3 squares, which would mean this would have to be 7, 1, 0 or something. That's nonsense. So this is 2, this is 8, this is 5. Okay, I'm not sure if that's done anything particularly profound. It's going to make it quite difficult for this digit though, isn't it? Because this digit can't be a 1 or a 3. So the minimum those two are adding up to is 6. Oh yeah, okay. So this square's got to be a 2. Because if this is not a 2, and it can't be a 1 or a 3, it's at least a 4, and the arrow would add up to 10. So that's a 2 out of nowhere. This... oh, we don't know what that is. This is not 7 anymore. It can no longer be low enough to be 7. We're either adding up to 8 or 9. This 2 is coming out of there. This 2 is fixing some stuff in column 4 and 6, look. Now that these 2 squares at the bottom are going to have to be a 4-6 pair, one of which is on an arrow, which is this one. Now, do we know, therefore, whether this is the circle or the... This square can still be... no, I'm not sure we do. Sort of the way I'm trying to think about this now is I'm looking at ends of the arrows and I'm asking whether they can be high or low digits. Now here, look, we can actually put 1 in this square, I think, and we can also put 9 and 8 into it. So my feeling about this square is that it's not very helpful, but I am well aware that I might be thinking about this incorrectly. Got something. This square is restricted. It can't be 1, 2 or 3. So the middle square of this arrow, which is never what we're summing to, so this is always, it's always part of the arithmetic, it's always part of the sum, is at least a 4. Now this square, therefore, well, if that's a 1, yeah, I'm just thinking, if this is not a 1, then this can't be the circle, because this would have to be 4 plus 5 equals 9, which it can't be. So can we prove that this, if this is a 1, then we know that this is the circle, and it's got to be a relatively, it can't be 9, 8 or 7, so it's a maximum value of 6. So you'd have to go 1, 4, 5, which might be possible, or 1, 5, 6, which also might be possible. Oh. But this square can never be a 4. That is what we can rule out. That square is never a 4. So now I've got a 1, 5 pair, which means this square is a 4. This is an 8. And just for, I hope that's clear why this can't be a 4. If this is a 4, what are we going to put in this square? We can't put 1, 2 or 3, so we've got to put at least 5, which means that we're adding down the grid, which means this is at least 9, and it can't be. So that's why that can't be a 4. This 8 is doing some work over here, look. And it's doing more work at the top of the grid, which means this is a 9. That's no longer a 9. Now we know, we've always known these squares. Oh no, maybe they've just become clear, because we did some stuff up there. 3, 5 and 7 go into those cells. There's still not enough horizontal communication here. Oh, I've got oh, bother. There's a 5 up there. So this square's a 1, and this square's a 5. Right, so this arrow is now resolved. We know that this can't be the circle, because if this is the circle, it can't be 9, 8 or 7, so it's broken. So this is the circle, but this square can't be a 1, 2 or 3, so that must be 4, this must be 1. And this 4 is presumably going to provide some magic along row 7. Yeah, hang on, now we can get the 1 at the bottom here. Once we know where the 1 is, we know the order of this arrow, because we now know the 6 must be at the other end. So the 6 and the 5 go in. So I think it must be something to do with, I can put 2 or 6 into this square. It must be this arrow, presumably. So what's this square going to be? This square has trouble being a low digit, but can still be a 3, you rotten thing. 3, 7, 8 or 9. Right, okay, but what we can do here is eliminate 3 by looking at the options. If this is 3, what are we putting into this square? we can't put 1 in because there's a 1 here, and we can't put another 3 in because in order to make 6, because double 3 in the box won't work. So this is not 3. Once this is not 3, we know that this is the circle that we've been looking for, and therefore this square is a low number. Although not that low, although actually, oh good grief, right, okay. What are the options for this square? It's not 1, 3, 4 or 5. And it can't possibly be 6, because 6 plus 4 is 10, so this has got to be 2. That means that that is a 2, which means that's a 4 by Sudoku. That gets us the 4 and the 6. That is quite important, look, because that means that's an 8, that's a 3, that's a 9, that's an 8. And I think we're now home and hosed, aren't we? 6 and 2 go in, 8 and 9 go in. Those squares are a 3-7 pair, which looks to be resolved. These squares have got to be a 5-9 pair, which looks to be resolved. This square's a 7, that's a 3, that's a 5. Yay! What a lovely puzzle. Good grief. As usual, from Totally Normal Cat. I mean, it's taken me nearly as long to solve it as it took him to set it. It's just ridiculous. It really is. Yeah, I mean, I loved a lot of this. What I thought was very clever was this was signalled very clearly that one of these was wrong. But then knowing one of these was correct was beautiful with the way this worked with the 20 cage. And actually then, the selection of this cage value is so clever because we were able, once you consider whether this can be 7, 8, 9, and you realise that that forces these squares to be selected from 1, 2, 3 and 4, this cage value is absolutely critical, because if it was one different, then the logic wouldn't work. But because we can only get to 9 with 3 of the digits, with 2, 3 and 4 for example, it's just not enough to make this work. If this had been a 12 cage, it would have worked fine. So the selection of 11 here was absolutely critical. That allowed us, what did that allow us to do? It allowed us to know this was real, which allowed us to get, and then we could perform the same trick on these squares. Yeah, it's just, I mean, this is even before we get to all of the arrow logic. Just the logic that is packed into 4 rows of the Sudoku up here is crazy. Crazy and clever. So take a bow as usual, Totally Normal Cat. You must do a lot of bowing, I suspect. And thanks so much for watching. We'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.